Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to my channel, my loverlies. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I am so happy you found me. I do so hope that you will like and subscribe before you leave. Become part of the Mama family. Mama's got your back, at least where makeup's concerned, and definitely when that makeup is cheap. Today is True Love Tuesday. We're talking about one of my very favorite old school, old Hollywood actresses. She's like the original man-eater. We're talking about Mae West and the true love of her life, Paul Novak. Guys, if you've never been here for True Love Tuesday, I sit here, I do my makeup, and I tell you an absolutely epic love story along the way. I usually don't talk too awful much about the makeup that I'm using, but I will make sure to put a full product list in the description box below, along with the tags to all of my other socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. I did make sure to do a TikTok on today's eye look. It turned out so fun. I used the Revolution Patricia Bright eyeshadow palette. I picked it up while I was on vacation for like $2. It was so like dirt cheap. Actually really good. I very much enjoyed it. Also, guys, if you have any questions about what I used or how I used it, all you have to do is leave me a comment and I will get back to you. Let's please try to ignore how red my face is. I am still so incredibly sunburnt from my vacation. I swear they need to invent like an SPF 1000. I lathered myself in sunscreen from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, and I stayed in the shade. I didn't sit out in the sun, but I'm so incredibly fair. It literally only takes 10 minutes if I'm not like super up to the minute on reapplying my sunscreen. 10 minutes in the sun and I turn into Lobster Girl. I literally matched my dress today. But it's kind of what inspired today's eye look. Again, I think it turned out so fun. It's very mod and kind of graphic a little bit. Loving it so much. I didn't get to play with my makeup very much while I was on vacation. So the minute I got back, I just kind of dove headfirst right back into it. So if you guys see me looking over in this direction, it is because I am looking at my notes. There aren't a ton of them for today's video. This story should be fairly short and sweet. I'm hoping I can get this done in under 30 minutes. I know some of my videos are ridiculously long. Trying to work on that. But of course, guys, let's just dive right into it. Let's just get into it. So, Mae West and Paul Novak. Now, if you don't know who Mae West is, she's like the original feminist, to me anyway. She is kind of like a woman's woman. She was very much, a lot of people had a lot of opinions about her. You either really loved her or you really hated her. There kind of was no in between when it came to her. She had one of those personalities that was incredibly polarizing, and a lot of that was just the fact that she was super blunt. She was super blunt and no nonsense. She didn't really care about your opinion of her. I mean, she wasn't a bad person. She helped people throughout her life. She was incredibly generous and giving, but she didn't care, and she was very open sexually. She was very modern in a time when women were so cloistered and very everyone was a prude, basically. Everyone was so shut down when it came to anything sexual, and she just put herself out there. She didn't care. She just took what she wanted. She went for it, and she was just open, incredibly open about everything. There was no shame in her game, and because of that, a lot of people, you know, just weren't giant fans of her. But if you were into that kind of thing, like you really loved her, I really feel like she would have done so well in today's world. She lived by that motto before it was even a motto. I don't know. I just have so much respect for her. But she was actually born Mary Jane West. She was born August 17th, 1893. She's best known for her, you know, like her breezy sexual independence, and her lighthearted kind of body. She had very vulgar humor, and it wasn't like vulgar as in like crass, but she had a very sexual humor. She was always making innuendos and double entendres. She was just very, just kind of like wink shoulder nudge nudge, that kind of thing. And it was kind of unheard of, especially for a woman to do that in her time. She was like one of the biggest sex symbols of her time as well. Incredibly beautiful woman. She was very petite as well. She was only, I think, like 5'2", so very petite. tiny as well, but she was very voluptuous. She was a very curvy woman. Not chubby in the respect like I'm chubby, but you know, she was kind of built like an outhouse, kind of like a brick outhouse. She had hips, she had a chest, she had a booty on her. She had that classic kind of hourglass body to her. Very, very just beautiful, just beautiful. Anyway, she was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And again, I think that has a lot to do with, you know, how she was, basically, how she portrayed herself. She was just very no nonsense, very to the point. And I guess a lot of that stems from, you know, she's a product of her raising, right? She wrote books and plays. She was incredibly tenacious and stubborn. She did everything from vaudeville to radio. She wrote books and plays. She was an incredibly accomplished performer just in general. But she wrote books and plays. She even recorded a rock and roll album, which I had no idea about, and I wasn't able to find it. I didn't really have enough time to really research it or really look for it, but I would be so interested in hearing some of her original recordings, though. It just seems like, and her voice was so unique anyway. Just, I can imagine what it would have sounded like if she would like croon at you. I don't know. I really want to hear what her recording sounded like, on top of the fact that it was a rock and roll album, which in my opinion really, really suits her. Like, of course she did a rock and roll album, but I had no idea. So yeah, she was not only a writer and an actress, but she was also a singer. She was whatever she wanted to be. Her whims changed with the weather, with the wind. She did whatever she wanted to do, and she just kind of went for it. I adore that about her. But yeah, she dipped a toe into basically just about everything. Her mother, Mathilde, was a corset and fashion model, so her mother was absolutely gorgeous as well. And then her father was actually a prize fighter. And again, I think this has something to do with her overall just kind of vibe, right? Because I do believe she was a little bit of a daddy's girl as well. And her father was like a really rough and tumble kind of roustabout. He, again, was a prize fighter, very, again, tenacious and stubborn. And she got a lot of that from her father. She got her good looks and her beauty from her mother, and she got basically her father's attitude. So her father was John Patrick West, also known as Battling Jack West. He was a prize fighter, and then later went on to create his own private investigations agency, which I thought was super, super fun to know. Now, when it comes to Mae's flings and marriages, y'all, there are many. I'm not even going to get into all of them. Mae West, she got around. Like I said, she did exactly what she wanted to do with whoever she wanted to do it with, and didn't even pretend to feel bad about it. She, again, was a giant sex symbol in her time, and had her pick of just about anybody, and did. She had a very, very healthy sexual appetite as well. And she just kind of, like I said, she just kind of went off and did her own thing. So her paramour list is quite long and extensive, but we're only going to talk about the ones that really stood out to me during my research. So the first one was the first and only time Mae legally got married, right? So she married Frank Wallace. Guys, this dude turned out to be such a winner. He was a real winner. So Mae married Frank Wallace, a fellow vaudeville actor, on April 11th, 1911, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She had first met him in 1909. She was only 17 at this time. And y'all, would you like to know the reason she married this man? Because if you know anything about Mae West, she was incredibly vocal about the fact that she didn't want anything to do with marriage. She was incredibly opposed to marriage and romantic love and commitment throughout her entire career. And you could kind of argue and say that that's pick-me behavior, but baby, it's not pick-me behavior when you really just don't care. Like, there was no reasoning. She didn't want anybody to own her. She didn't want anybody to own her. She didn't want want to have anybody have any kind of say over her career, how she lived her life, how she spent her money. She just was truly a very independent and just very content in her own company. She didn't have any kind of use for a man other than to appease her incredible appetite for, fun time. And that is the only reason she married Mr. Frank Wallace. Now, he was not a good-looking man. I guess cute, but not really anything special. And she goes on to say that, she never would have married him for any other reason. But she was 17 at the time, and again, she has never really kind of messed around with anyone or anything at this point. She's starting to go out on the road, and her career is she's trying to start her career, things like that. This foundation is so pale for me right now. So she's trying to start her career, but again, she's 17. She is awakening as a woman, and in those times, it was literally unheard of to have fun time without having a ring on your finger. And her managers and her friends told her, listen, if you want to do it, I understand it, but you got to be married. What happens if you get pregnant? What happens, if something happens, you need to have that insurance plan. You need to be married. So she finally relents. She's like, okay, whatever. I don't care. I just want to do what I want to do. So they go and they have a really quick marriage ceremony. She was 18, she was 17, and he was 18. She was, again, notoriously against marriage and love. So she kept this so far under wraps. She didn't tell a freaking soul. She didn't tell anybody that they went and got married, except for her very, very closest friends and, of course, witnesses that they had present at the wedding. Other than that, though, she never said a word about it to anyone. She never admitted it. And they went on, and of course, they had a very, very short kind of dalliance. She got what she wanted from him, and then just kind of left him in the dust. Her career picked up a little bit, and life kind of goes on. Well, she never stopped to actually, address the fact that she was indeed a married woman. And they never really had a relationship. She just did what she needed to do in order to get where she wanted to get. That comes back to bite her in the hiney, though. She kept the marriage to Frank a very dirty little secret. She never told a soul. But the marriage ended up being discovered by a filing clerk many, many years later, who came across their marriage certificate in 1935. So they got married in 1911, and the certificate was discovered in 1935. So almost 20 something years later. And of course, Mae West is Mae West by this point. And she is a very famous figure, and, very well known in Hollywood. So when this filing clerk comes across her, marriage certificate after she has been so vocal in the fact that, she'll never get married, blah, blah, blah. The filing clerk automatically knows that he's struck gold. So he instantly goes to the press, and the press have an absolute heyday with it. They have a heyday with it. And then here comes Frank kind of crawling out of the woodwork, like the skeezy little worm that he is. And he's trying to use it to his advantage. Because although Mae has gone on to create an incredibly successful career for herself, Frank's career pretty much just kind of fizzled out. It never really panned out. His career never really went anywhere. And now, all of a sudden, he's got this kind of claim to fame because he is Mae West's husband. He is the husband that she swore she would never have. This, that, the other thing. So, of course, everybody and their mama had a big old heyday with it. And he tried to milk this for all that it was worth. He ended up actually taking Mae to court, and he actually said that he took her to court for spousal support. He took her to court for half of everything that she owned, stating that everything that she had earned since they were married half of it belonged to him. He said that he had sacrificed his career in order to help hers, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Really just kind of saying he was an absolute victim in the whole thing. And then here is Mae West, and she has just left this man alone. She hasn't done anything to this man. She's just gone on about her life and really never given him a second thought. And then when the marriage certificate gets found and all heck breaks loose, she has to instantly go on the defensive because her very livelihood, her entire image, and her brand basically is in jeopardy. So, and of course, Mae is a fighter and she's not going to just take it laying down. So they take it to court, and this becomes a very long, very lengthy, and I mean, Frank wants what Frank wants. So he's not gonna give up without a fight. So he takes her to court, and she's like no. So she goes out and she gets the best lawyers that she can, and she fights it to the best of her ability. She couldn't get rid of him. Oh, okay. After being legally interrogated, again, when this first comes out, she's completely denying it. She's denying that she's ever been married. I think this was her first mistake. She completely denies that they were even married. She says that it never happened, that he was a liar. And then when the filing clerk finds the marriage certificate, that's when the police kind of get involved because of all the allegations that Frank is kind of volleying at her. So she gets interrogated by the police and eventually ends up having to admit that yes, they did indeed get married. But she says that they never lived together as man and wife. They just, like I said, they had their wedding night and then they went their separate ways. And again, this was super unheard of for that time. So of course, the police, the press, the courts, everybody had a really difficult time believing this. So they're a little bit more inclined to take Frank's side of it, on top of the fact that she denied that they were married. And that turned out to be a lie. But she said after being legally interrogated in July of 1937, she finally admitted they had been married, but said that they had never lived together as husband and wife, and insisted that they had slept in separate bedrooms, that they had never consummated the wedding, right? This is what she's saying. She couldn't get rid of him. He basically was just obsessed with her. And she said the only way that she could get rid of him, I have a gnat flying around. So if you see a little black thing flying around in here, it's because I have a fruit fly in here that I cannot seem to catch. But she said the only way she was eventually able to get rid of him was she sent him off to perform in a show of his own, and was just like, and then kind of washed her hands of him and never really thought about him again after that. Well, of course, Frank is saying that is not what happened. That is, of course, they did kind of go their separate ways, but he is just this doting, devoted husband. He has loved her for forever, and she has just kind of like abused him and taken advantage of his soft heart, this, that, and the other thing. Well, they end up taking it to court, and she was eventually able to obtain a divorce on July 21st of 1942. So a good long while she spent in court trying to divorce this man. But not before Frank went after half of everything she owned. He petitioned for both spousal support and half of all her earnings since their marriage, and property acquired since they had wed. She ended up only having to pay his court costs, but was still pretty unhappy about it. Now, it turns out that Frank was not quite as innocent as he had claimed to be. So again, he had went off and they had both done their own separate things. Well, Frank ended up going out, and his whole case, his whole reasoning in court is that he was the doting, devoted husband, and that she just kind of like ignored him and neglected him, right? She is the one who neglected him. But it comes to light. Mae hires private detectives and lawyers, all that good stuff. They go out hunting for any kind of dirt they can find on this Frank guy, and they find it. It turns out that Frank had married another woman named Ray Blakesley in 1916. So just a few years after they got married, after he had married Mae in 1911, in 1916, he went out and married another woman by the name of Ray Blakesley in New York City. But he had done this without seeking a legal divorce from Mae first. So it goes to show that, one, he wasn't pining after his wife. He wasn't trying to work on their relationship. He was out actively pursuing other women and having active relationships. On top of that, he committed polygamy by marrying another woman while still being married. Anyway, big kerfuffle. Anyway, the courts kind of really realized that he was just kind of trying to milk Mae for all that she was worth, and they ended up siding with Mae. Now, again, she did end up having to pay for Frank's court costs, But in the grand scheme of things, she actually ended up a-okay, right? Because I'd rather just pay the legal fees than have to sit there and give this tiny gnat of a man half of everything that I'd worked my butt off for years, right? So after this big kerfuffle is over, Mae has completely and totally washed her hands of all of these men. But before this whole battle even went to court, again, Mae is not some celibate nun who's just sitting in her room, sitting in her tower, locking herself away from, the male race, right? No. So then we have Mae's other husband, and his name was Guido. I think it's Deiro. Deiro? His name's Guido, okay? We have Guido. And Mae met Guido in August of 1913. So again, not too long after she kind of did the whole thing with Frank. And again, she got really lucky because this ended up not being kind of called up into court. There's not a lot known about her relationship with Guido. All we know is that it is very possible that they got married as well. But again, the same kind of thing happens where she wasn't divorced from Frank. She ended up being married to Frank for almost like 31 years. So every relationship that she had during that 31-year marriage, none of it was valid because she was legally still married to Frank. So she met Guido in August of 1913. He was an Italian-born vaudeville actor. She had a thing for her vaudeville guys. He was an actor, a headliner, and a piano and accordion star. He was actually very, very musically gifted and very, very popular on the circuit at the time. He was actually much more famous than she was. But again, Mae is Mae. She's absolutely stunning. She's turning heads wherever she goes. And she's basically just got her pick of the litter. Right? So she stumbles across Guido, and she's what, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 at this point, kind of in her prime, and Guido just falls head over heels for her. They were instantly and incredibly attracted to each other. It was almost like a primal infatuation between the two. It was never true love, but there was an intense primal attraction. And again, Mae is very open and very vocal about the fact that she does not shy away from her baser kind of inclinations, right? So again, he was the bigger star and a very big deal on the vaudeville circuit. They were instantly attracted, and eventually they ended up getting married in 1914. So, again, this marriage is not legal, but it does happen. Now, it is up for debate whether they were ever actually married or not. Either way, even if they had gotten married, it wouldn't have been legal because at this point she's still married to Frank. But it kind of, historians, knowledgeable people on the subject, don't really know if they actually got married or if they did or they didn't. But they were supposedly married in 1914. Mae said that Guido was an amazing lover. She said the sex thing was terrific with this guy. I wanted to do it morning, noon, and night, and that's all I wanted to do. And when I read that quote, I can just imagine her saying it, and that kind of like that if you ever seen a Mae West movie, you know, like the cadence and the bravado of her voice. I can just imagine her saying it, just being so, oh, I love it so much. But she was like, yeah, we basically, that's all there was. There was no love. There was no like heart kind of attachment there. It was just about the boom boom. It was just about the boom boom. And she was very, very open with that fact. But she said it was quite amazing, apparently. She goes on to say that despite their intense attraction to one another, their marriage just didn't last. It wasn't meant to last. It wasn't going to last. It was a very brief, hot flare of, physical attraction. It was a flame that was there and then gone. And their marriage didn't last very long. But they actually ended up staying friends for quite a good long while. They traveled together for many years after that, but eventually they divorced in 1920. Though in reality, again, their marriage was never legal because she was married to Frank. So then we have Mr. Paul Novak, and Paul truly was I think Paul was just a good guy. Paul was just a good guy, and I don't think that Mae really first of all, I don't think that she was ready for that. I don't think that she was ready for someone who was as earnest and as giving and loving and genuine as Paul was. Paul genuinely loved Mae. And it is so weird because their dynamic is very, very off. We're going to get into it. Mae had once said that a man in the house is worth two in the street. Baby, I couldn't agree with you more. And for the last 26 years of her life, Paul was that man. Paul was the man in her life. He did literally everything for her. He was everything from her companion to her bodyguard to her emotional support person. He was everything to her. He basically devoted himself to her for 26 years, trying to prove to her that he loved her, not just for her body, not just for what she could provide for him, but he just wanted to love her. He spent 26 years just begging her to let him love her. That's all. Paul was that man, her companion, her bodyguard, and the love of her life. She has publicly admitted that Paul was indeed the love of her life. He shunned publicity, so we know that it had nothing to do with him trying to advance himself or advance some kind of career by being in a relationship with her. It really didn't have anything to do with that. And the reason that people were so against this relationship in the first place, again, remember the time, it's the 1950s, okay? America is a very, very different place at this point. And we have Mae West, right? Who is arguably, she's past her prime. She's getting a little bit older. And then we have this young man who is 30 years younger than her. He was, I think, how old? She was 62 at this time, and he was 32. So we have a 62-year-old woman who is actively being pursued by this 32-year-old man who, again, is pretty much in his prime. He is well built and attractive, and he's not an addict. He's not he's not in showbiz. There's no clear motive for his love, right? Because that's what we expect. You have stories like Judy Garland's and so many others where you have these kind of aging starlets who are pursued by these younger men only to be used and discarded. And you would think that the same would apply for this story because, again, he is so much younger than her. But it just was not the case. It wasn't the case at all. Mae's last years were as happy as they possibly could have been because of Paul. Paul and Mae met in the 1950s when he became a part of the team of muscle men who backed her in her Vegas nightclub act. So by this time, again, Mae is getting just a little bit older, and she's kind of moved on to Vegas. She has a regular show there. She performs pretty much every night, and in this performance, Mae is pretty much being herself, and in her background she's got all of these super buff, meaty kind of bodybuilder guys wearing Speedos and just kind of looking sexy behind her while she's just kind of strutting her stuff out on the stage. And she probably had her pick of all of the men, because even at 62, Mae West still looked good, okay? She still looked good even at 62. And she still, of course, had her pick of the litter when it came to her muscle men. Each and every one of them was just kind of like begging for a chance to even have a moment of her time. But when it comes to Paul, things were definitely different. It wasn't that like Paul just wanted a little bit of that instant gratification and then to be on his way. Paul wanted something more. He wanted something deeper. He wanted something a little bit more real from Mae, and it scared her. It scared her terribly because, again, she's had a couple of, really bad experiences with men at this point. And again, she's just she doesn't want marriage. She doesn't want a committed anything. She just wants to do her own thing and then to be left alone. And then there comes Paul, and he's kind of like, ooh, I know you want something different. You want to love me. You just don't know it yet. So a little bit of backstory on Paul, because I think it is deserved. Paul was born Christopher Rybonsky in Baltimore in 1923 and served as a Navy gunner in the Second World War. He then joined the, what were they called? It was part of the Marines. Anyway, he joined the Marines to fight in Korea and then later in Vietnam. Now, after his military service, he set out to become a bodybuilder. And the reason he set out to become a bodybuilder was because he had the intention of becoming a professional wrestler. This was his end goal. This was what he really wanted to do with himself and with his life. And actually, ended up making a ton of friends in the bodybuilding community. One in particular by the name of George or Joe Gold. Anyway, Mr. Gold would end up going on to create Gold's Gym and then later on World Gym. So very incredibly successful man on his own. So of course, he's got kind of influential friends of his own. But he goes on and he's working on himself. He's trying to bulk up and he wants to be a professional wrestler. He then goes on to change his name. He changes his name to Charles Krauser after he kind of like decides that he really wants to be a wrestler, after he gets, starts building himself up, figures out what he wants to do with himself, because he figures that the name Krauser would make a better name for a wrestler. And then he ended up going on to change his name one more time to Paul Novak at Mae's kind of encouragement. She's the one who suggested his final name. Now, the chemistry between them was instant and deep, right? Because it wasn't just attraction. There was chemistry there. There was a potential for intimacy. There was a potential for real connection. And like I said, it scared the crap out of Mae. But Mae fought it. She fought it tooth and nail. She was used to doing what and who she pleased. And Paul wanted something more serious, and he wanted a committed relationship. And Mae, at this point in her life, just wasn't ready to give that to Paul. Again, she's 62 at this time, but again, she's lived her life a certain way for such a long time that she's just not sure she can change. She's not sure that she can give Paul what he wants, and she's not even gonna try. But the chemistry was kind of undeniable. So she starts kind of messing around with Paul a little bit, not doing anything too serious, because at this point, Paul is not the only one that she's messing around with. Another one of her muscle men that backed her on her show was a bodybuilder by the name of Mickey Hargitay. Now, if we know anything about Mr. Hargitay, if you don't know who Mickey Hargitay is, he was a bodybuilder. He was also the husband to Jane Mansfield, and we're going to do a whole video on Jane Mansfield here coming up, because their story is absolutely bazonkers. But, where was I? Oh, but Mae is kind of having a little bit of a fling. She's kind of messing around with both of them. She's messing around with Paul, and she's messing around with Mickey. Then Mickey ends up entering into a relationship with Jane, and Jane is notoriously known to be a little bit unhinged. She's a little bit unhinged, notoriously jealous as well. The relationship between Jane and Mickey was incredibly volatile. It was volatile and explosive, and just they fought incessantly. And when Jane found out that Mae was kind of playing around and messing around with Mickey, Jane lost her crap. She lost her crap, and she actually ended up going out and starting this kind of smear campaign about Mae, telling people, anybody who would listen, basically, that Mae was way too old to be behaving the way that she was, and just kind of saying disparaging remarks about Mae and her age, and just kind of being nasty in general. And Mickey's not doing anything about this. Mickey's just kind of loving that he's got two women fighting over him, where Mae is, she's got a tough exterior, but Paul can tell that this is really bothering her. This is bothering Mae, and it's actually having an impact on her career and things like that as well. So Paul steps up, and he actually ends up getting into a fight with Mickey. And after this fight, Mickey ends up getting kicked out of Mae's act, and it was awful. but it was kind of good as well, because after this happened, Mae kind of opened her eyes just a little bit and realized that Paul was serious. Paul really did have true feelings. He was ready and willing to defend her and protect her and all of the things that all of us women really, really want, you know? And she had never truly experienced before. Mae was very used to being used and things like that, right? But she had never experienced someone really going to bat for her. So after this happens, Mae finally just kind of opens herself up to the possibilities, and her and Paul become an official item. Now, she's still trying. She is trying to fight this. She's just giving she's giving an inch at a time. She'll give him a little piece of intimacy, a little piece of her heart at a time, but she never was just like fully in, right? She always had one foot out of the relationship, and she found herself, she had never been through anything like this before. She had never had a relationship like this before. So she is at 62, 63 in completely new territory when it comes to love. And it's kind of like a whole new world for her. So Paul and Mae become an item, and throughout her career, Mae had been known for her countless love affairs. She had once said, "Sometimes it seems as if I've known so many men that the FBI ought to come to me first to compare fingerprints." And again, that's just Mae's humor, but it was pretty much true. She was very open and free with the fact that she sampled whatever delicacy caught her eye, right? And then here comes Paul, and he's kind of like changing her whole outlook on the world, the whole way that she sees men and the way that she interacts with them. But Paul quickly became her lover, her bodyguard, her driver, her cook. He became her companion, and basically anything he could to prove to her that he just wanted to love her. He just wanted to be a part of her life, and he just wanted her to open up to him and basically just let him in. And little by little, Mae began to settle down, and for the first time in her life, she's in a monogamous relationship. For the first time in her life at the age of 63, she's in a monogamous relationship with a man 30 years younger with her, and she's happier than she has ever been in her life. Any and all who knew them could tell that they were just completely and totally besotted with each other. They were enamored. They were truly in love, and it was sweet and endearing, and I'm so happy that Mae was able to experience a true love like that, able to experience a true devotion, because I feel like everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves to be able to experience, you know, their person, right? To be able to be loved unconditionally and for no other reason than because you're here and because I love you, right? I'm so happy that she was able to experience that. Any and all who knew them could attest to their mutual devotion, but they were both strong-willed, and they were both super temperamental. And as much as they did love each other and as devoted as they were to each other, that's not to say that their relationship was perfect, because of course it wasn't. You've got Mae, who is very, very new to relationships in general. And then you've got Paul, who is, you know, he's a military man. He is used to having things his way. He's definitely not used to people telling him no. And they really had to learn how to be together. They had to learn how to coexist, and it took a little bit of time. It took a little bit of time for them to kind of really hit their stride. But they do. On one occasion, after an argument with Mae's brother and sister-in-law they had a problem with this relationship. So Mae, like I said, was incredibly generous and giving, and she actually supported most of her family. So she had a brother and a sister, I think. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But I know for a fact that she fully supported her brother and her sister-in-law and their family. And I think that when Paul came into the picture, I think that this scared her brother and specifically her sister-in-law. I think that they were worried that this newcomer was going to kind of come in and weasel his way into Mae's good graces, and that they were, that they were going to get cut off basically, right? And of course, Mae wasn't going to do that. But because they were worried about this, they were incredibly cruel to Paul. They were very, very mean to him. They were nasty. They were snarky. And after one such incident of them being just totally hateful to Paul for absolutely no reason, Paul basically lost his crap and kind of blew up. And that's Mae's brother, so Mae can't, it's like Mae is kind of in between a rock and a little bit of a hard place. She's not going to cut off her brother financially, and their relationship is still fairly new, so she can't like fully stand up for Paul, because again, she doesn't genuinely know his motivations at this point. So a big argument ensues between Paul and the brother, and Paul's like, you know what, I'm done. I'm tired of trying so hard. You want to be alone and miserable, you just be alone and miserable. I'm leaving. So he packs his bags and he calls his good friend. He calls his friend Joe Gold, again, owner of Gold's Gym and World Gym, I think. World Gym, to drive him to New Orleans. And Paul decides that he is going to sign up again for the Army or the Navy. Which was it? He was going to sign up for another tour of duty with the Merchant Marines. So he says, you know what? I don't need this. I have options. If you don't want to treat me with respect, with some semblance of respect, if you can't fully accept me into your life, then I'm just wasting my time here and I'm just going to be done. He calls his friend Joe, and Joe basically drops everything he's doing and picks up Paul and drives him to New Orleans. Now they get to New Orleans and Paul is basically just about to board the ship, and he stops for just a second. He's like, I gotta make a phone call. I gotta make one more phone call before I leave. And he disappears for a good half an hour. The next thing Joe knows is Paul is coming back up to him, and he's like, man, I got a plane to catch. I'll see you later. Paul jumps back onto a plane, flies right back to Mae, and they make up and everything's okay again. He leaves Joe in the middle of New Orleans, having to drive himself all the way back on his lonesome. So it was very volatile in the beginning. Again, they were temperamental and stubborn, and neither one of them wanted to admit when they had done something wrong. But they did eventually get over this, and they were able to have a very happy, healthy, stable relationship. As Paul was leaving, Mae had said, just remember, there ain't no swinging doors in this place. Basically saying, if you leave, don't come back. You don't get to give up and then say, oh, I'm sorry. You don't get to quit on me and then just try to come right back. So before Paul really left and really made that big mistake, he had called Mae, and they had made up basically, and Mae told him that he needed to get his butt back home. And that is exactly what he did. During the final years of Mae's life, because again, they got together when she was 62. So she was well on, she was up in her years, right? So towards the end of Mae's life, she and Paul lived a super quiet life. Now, Mae, a lot of people like to think that Mae wanted to be the center of attention, and you would think so because of the characters that she plays in her movies, things like that. You would think that she was kind of an attention seeker and needed to be, in the center of every conversation, things like that. But in reality, it couldn't have been further from the truth. Mae really enjoyed just sitting in the corner and just observing. And that is one of the reasons that her and Paul worked together so well, is because Paul was he's very charming and intelligent as well, and very able to carry a conversation. So Mae would just kind of sit in a chair and just enjoy the conversation. And I think because she had to be so upfront and like in the spotlight for her movies and her career, I think that she really enjoyed taking a back seat when it came to her personal life. One of her favorite things to do was to throw small dinner parties at their home. They would entertain small groups of friends, and Paul would just basically do most of the entertaining, and Mae would just kind of get to sit back and enjoy her life, which who doesn't want to do that, right? They also enjoyed long walks by the sea near her 22-room Gigantosaurus house in Santa Monica, where they spent most of their time. Now, Mae had been diagnosed with diabetes quite a while ago. When she was quite a bit younger, Mae had a very, very soft spot for chocolates and sweets. And so because of that, Paul was actually really strict with her, and he actually really regimented both her diet and exercise regimen. And because he was so supportive in her diet and the way that she kind of lived her life, Mae actually went on to live an incredibly long, fulfilled life. She actually lived until the age of 87, until sadly she suffered a series of strokes and passed away in her sleep. And she passed away in the same bed as Paul. Paul was right there beside her when she left. And I think one of the things that is the saddest about it is that they had a good amount of time, but it was also a short amount of time, right? Because she was 62. They still had a good 26 years, but you know, a million years probably wouldn't be enough when true love is concerned. Paul was, of course, completely and totally stunned and just devastated with the loss. And this is the brother and the sister. She did have a sister. So, and everybody kind of was like, well, what's going to happen? What is the question that was on my mind also is, well, what happened to Mae's estates, right? Was this some kind of long con? Was this something that Paul had kind of had planned? Did he just kind of swoop in and take everything, this, that, the other thing? Actually, what happened is Mae had been insisting for months before she died to have Paul get up with a lawyer so that she could change her will. Paul had staunchly, just like he had resisted. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to even think about losing Mae because, again, this is the love of his life. This is a woman that he has lived for the past 26 years. And he doesn't even want to think about her not being in the picture anymore. So he put it off and he put it off until he couldn't put it off anymore. And she actually ended up passing and wasn't able to revise her will before she passed. So when she sadly passes away, Paul is left with nothing. He is left with nothing. I think there was a $10,000 clause written in her will somewhere. And Paul actually, I guess he inherited, he was gifted, he was willed $10,000 when she died. But of course, Mae was worth millions of dollars, and most of that actually went to her sister, not even her brother, whom she had been financially supporting. Most of her estate went to her brother. And Paul would go on to say, he always said that when she had told him to get up with a lawyer, he had said, now, dear, there's plenty of time to do that. I guess I thought she would live forever. I always thought, how did she ever pick me? Me, just a wrestler and a roustabout. He just never thought. I guess it's hard. It's hard to think about the ones we love so much, the ones that we kind of live and survive for. It's really difficult to think about them not being with us anymore. And it was just something that he just wasn't ready to face while she was still alive. And unfortunately, it kind of left him in a very difficult position because, of course, he's been living, his whole life has been wrapped around Mae for the last 26 years. And after her passing, he basically had nothing. And with the $10,000, he kind of he had to go out and start a whole nother life. He actually did end up taking the estate to court. I had to put this in here. He actually did end up taking Mae's estate to court, and he tried to tell the courts that, they had been in a relationship for a very, very long time, that they were essentially common law married, things like that, and that he did indeed deserve at least a portion of the estate. And he actually ended up settling for, I think, around $190,000, which I guess at that time was a very good chunk of change. So he got a good amount of money out of it. I do believe that he ended up getting remarried. I couldn't find any literature on the name of the woman that he remarried. It did take him quite a good long while to get into another relationship after Mae. but he did kind of go on with his life. He was still a fairly young man when Mae passed. I think he was in his 50s. So 50s, early 60s. So he did have a good long amount of life to live and had to continue living. So he did find a new love, but never once did he forget about Mae. And then when he died. So he died in July of 1999 at the age of 76 at St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica while undergoing treatment for advanced prostate cancer. And that is where today's story ends. I do think that this is probably one of my favorite stories that I've spoken about in the last couple of weeks. I just love that after so many years of denying herself true love and affection, love will find a way. Love will find a way, and it will wiggle its little heart, wiggle its way into your heart every single time. And I'm just really happy for both of them. I'm happy that they got to experience such a beautiful, gorgeous, grand kind of love, like an all-encompassing, sweet, real kind of love. You know what I mean? Guys, I am going to finish my makeup, and I will make sure to post pictures over on Facebook and Instagram. Again, all the links will be in the description box below. I really, really hope that you enjoyed today's story. I really enjoyed telling it. Let me know if you have any suggestions for stories in the future. I would love to hear who you guys would like to hear about. Also, as always, no filters, no edits, no fancy lighting. It's just me sitting in front of my camera telling you guys an absolutely epic love story, hoping you guys are enjoying what I'm doing. If you did enjoy the content, please make sure that you give this video a big old thumbs up before you leave. Make sure that you mash that subscribe button, and make sure that you turn on all your notifications so that next time I upload, you can come right back here and we can hang out again. Guys, I love you so, so very much. And until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and remember, you're important. Bye.